Hey guys, and welcome back to the High Level Podcast. This is the segment in the news where we keep you up to date on engineering news, things happening in physics, in science, in engineering. Thank you again for joining us. Quick one, if you have not subscribed, would highly recommend. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on your favorite podcast platform. Please guys, it really helps the channel out, and it also allows you to get our stuff every week. Every time we back on, you can just the episode's there. It's downloaded for you. It's ready for you. So would really appreciate it, guys. And any comments you have, please, guys, drop them down below. I'm very keen. As always, the links to all the stories for this will be down in the description below. So if you want to check out the full articles, you can go ahead for that. I hope you guys are keeping warm. I'm recording this on Saturday, the 21st of September, and it is chilly in Joburg. The cold front has moved all the way in here. So I hope you guys are keeping warm. This is going to be released on the 23rd on Monday. So I don't know how the weather's going to look, but otherwise, I hope you guys are keeping warm. Yeah, just feeling good. And with that being said, let's get into the first story here. And this story I have labeled, "The EU puts its money where its mouth is." So on the 9th of September, we had the European Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simpson, come through to Pretoria. She was presenting to a whole bunch of people, but people who were there was South Africa's Electricity and Energy Minister. I'm not going to say his first name because I feel like I will just be butchering it. Dr. Ramokgopa, and Trade and Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau. And basically, she gave us money. That's the headline here. So we got a grant of about 32 million euros, which equates to about 628 million rand. And a lot of this is meant to help our green hydrogen industry, push us into a bit more innovation, and obviously to create a strategic partnership between South Africa and the EU. So very interesting things here. It's basically a build-up. We've had quite a bit of financing from the EU around this, but this is sort of an extension of that financial program. We've been getting quite a bit of grants since about 2013, and this is part of our infrastructure program and agreement between the South Africa and the EU, and it's meant to strengthen that partnership, obviously help out with a bit of innovation. So where's the 628 million rand actually meant to go? So of that 628, about 138 million rand is dedicated to Transnet. This apparently is going to be going towards some feasibility studies, some pilot projects focused really around production and storage of low carbon hydrogen. So not necessarily green hydrogen, just lower carbon hydrogen. Then the rest, 490 million rand, is apparently going into some sort of fund which is there to support the development of a green hydrogen industry. And apparently they want to work off some leverage that they have about 10 billion rand in private and public funding across the value chain. So this would be everything from production to transportation, storage, downstream industries. So apparently there's quite a bit of money flowing in. So this is sort of a top up. I think it's more of like a, we want to be a partner with you. Here's some grant money. Show us what you want to do with it type of thing. So a lot of this sort of grant funding flows out of European officials sort of doing what they call a matchmaking platform. They're trying to link for future, obviously, and for their emissions goals. They're trying to make non-European partnerships with producers. And a lot of those include South Africa. So South Africa, Namibia, a lot of the South African countries. And apparently they want to start introducing this platform, start getting something out of it in 2025. So I'll keep you guys up to date on the story. Very interesting. Again, 628 million rand granted to South Africa to develop our green hydrogen economy. All right, then swiftly we move on to story number 2. And this was a pretty interesting one. Credit going out here to Skalkberger from Engineering News, who compiled this, and basically showing that going greener is sort of having a financial benefit for companies. This company here, BCGX in London, they did a survey of about 1,864 companies. And about 25% of those companies said that they've realized some sort of financial net benefit to their yearly revenues, some as much as 7% or even a little bit more. This equates to about $200 million a year in financial benefits per company that they surveyed, which is really, really good. So the person who did the survey, or who was in charge of the survey, is Diana Dimitrova, and she's a partner, and her sort of expertise is climate and sustainability, specifically within data. And she was just saying there's good financial benefits to guys. There's a significant amount of capital that can be unlocked by this. About $3 to $5 trillion a year would be required to transition the world to net zero. But if we start seeing these sort of financial benefits, it's going to sort of have this momentum type of effect where more companies see that it actually makes sense to go greener, so they start putting more into it, things get cheaper, and you just get this rolling effect. And basically the whole report was, they said there are starting to come financial benefits, but those companies that move first will have the biggest sort of benefits to their bottom line, to their top line. And talking bigger picture here, if we're going to decarbonize the world, basically, and the global supply chains, about 80% of the work to decarbonize all the industries around the world, they say needs to happen within companies, within suppliers, within value chains, things like that, and within scope 3 emissions. Now, what is a scope 3 emission? I didn't know this, so I thought I'd just give you the different types of scopes and their emissions. So you get scope 1 emissions, which are direct emissions. So this would be you have a company vehicle and you burn diesel. That's the emissions. Very easy to calculate, very easy to report on. Then you get scope 2 emissions, which are indirect emissions. So like if I'm purchasing electricity from Eskom, what's the emissions impact from that, or versus a renewable supplier like solar panels, whatever the story is. Then you get scope 3 emissions, which is what she was speaking about before. And these are more sort of intangibles. And this is like everything. This is from your execs traveling by private plane versus commercial plane, the waste you generate during your day-to-day activities. Even if you have franchises, what are their emissions? So a bit harder to calculate. But these scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions is where they see, okay, we need to report on them, and then this is going to inform how we reduce them. So they looked at obviously a whole bunch of companies all around the world, and they say that the top 5 countries leading in terms of measuring, reporting, and meeting reduction targets within companies now are China, very surprising, right? Brazil, India, Japan, and the US. So this is, again, who's making the biggest impact in terms of companies and decarbonizing in the world. And they said that they're going to see a large amount of benefit for guys who start decarbonizing. And these aren't only limited to countries implementing regulations. They say they see a lot of benefits from companies who don't even have regulations placed on them by government, but they're starting to decarbonize. Apparently, this is quite a big thing in Brazil where companies are actually going above and beyond, sort of. They're going out of their way to decarbonize, and they're starting to see a financial benefit for it. So really, really awesome. I'm just looking more at Africa. About 43% of companies surveyed in Africa reported seeing significant benefits from decarbonization, which is well above the 25% average of global companies gaining from decarbonization. Now, I obviously didn't see the survey. I would assume there's a few more intangibles in there, not only financial benefits, but nice to see that companies are starting to benefit now from decarbonizing, not only in like a sort of like a PR stunt type of thing, but they're actually starting to get increases in revenue. They're starting to reduce costs, things like that. It's really, really awesome to see that decarbonizing is starting to have a financial benefit now. And then we move quickly over to story number 3, another green hydrogen story. So for those of you that don't know, there was a DVAC hydrogen summit in Santon this last week. I think it was on the 19th and the 20th, Thursday and Friday last week. And credit here to Karabo Marifi writing for Central News. We're going to start seeing a lot more green hydrogen and a lot more investment than we have seen, just because there's some sort of laws in place, which I'll get into now. So Infrastructure South Africa, a bit of backstory. Infrastructure South Africa in 2022 gazetted 9 strategic objective projects, which they call SRPs, again in 2022, and they valued these projects at around 300 billion rand, and that's under the Green Hydrogen National Program. There's a lot of programs, a lot of objectives, things like that, but all you need to know is Green Hydrogen National Program. In 2022, they identified 9 strategic objectives that they want to focus on, and this has led to South Africa having a lot of interest in developing green hydrogen. Obviously, we have a lot of renewable resources here and access to those renewable resources, in fact, to the value of over 800 billion rand. So a lot of foreign investment looking to capitalize on South Africa's access to renewables, and obviously that flows over into green hydrogen. According to the Public Works and Infrastructure Deputy Minister, about 20% of these investments have already reached bankable feasibility study. So they're already there to start building, basically. The administration now in charge of all these projects has identified 3 main priorities that they want to drive out of this green hydrogen sort of plan. They obviously want to drive inclusive growth and job creation. It's nice to have a new industry come in, creates a lot more jobs. The second thing they want to do is reduce poverty. Obviously, it's nice for green hydrogen because South Africa is so rich in sunlight, and a lot of small rural communities, you're sort of out in the middle of nowhere where there's a lot of sun. So we can start developing these communities, creating a lot more jobs for them and pulling them out of poverty. And then the third one is they want to build a capable, ethical and developmental state. Whatever that means, I'm sure there's a bit more behind it, but seems like reasonable goals and priorities for the administration. And again, he was speaking at the DVAC Hydrogen Conference in Santon last week, and he said that he emphasized basically that government is committed to supporting green hydrogen as a catalyst for long-term development. And he said this, he had this to say, he said, by gazetting the GHNP, which is the Green Hydrogen National Plan, as a strategic integrated project, the SIP, there's a lot of abbreviations and things here. We have placed these projects on an expedited path to development with prescribed and shortened timeframes for various project approvals and authorizations. And I think this is a good step. Obviously, people forget how much policy goes into actually putting down sort of new infrastructure. It takes a lot, and sometimes approvals take so long. So it's nice to see that there's some policy, there's some push to try and decrease the length of going from, okay, I've done my feasibility study all the way to implementation. So it's really good to see that. Some major projects that they sort of highlighted at the conference. In Gauteng, we have the Isando Precious Metals project, which is going to be a fuel cell and electrolyzer manufacturing facility in Isando, obviously, to try and start creating fuel cells on a mass scale. Then in the Northern Cape, we have two projects. We have the Prishka Energy Cluster Green Ammonia Production Facility, obviously to produce green ammonia. Then we have the Bochus Bay Green Hydrogen Port, Rail and Infrastructure Project. This is basically, it's a port infrastructure, and it's trying to position us as a global port for export now of hydrogen and a little bit of other green things, maybe green ammonia. Then we have the Eastern Cape. We have the Hive Green Ammonia Export Project. That's specifically for green ammonia, again in the transport and logistics part of hydrogen. Then in the Western Cape, we have the ArcelorMittal Saldanha Green Steel Project, specifically targeting green steel. So instead of using coking coal, we use green hydrogen to refine steel and create a greener product. And they want to position themselves, it will obviously be specifically for exports. Well, I say obviously, but it will mainly be for exports. And then in the Free State, we have Sasol coming on board with actually a massive project. They are building a 60 megawatt hydrogen production facility. And that's going to be mainly electrolyzer based, and they're going to be producing green hydrogen for export for their own purposes. So yeah, quite a lot of projects going on in and around. The minister, again, Zikalala, he said that only about 1% of South Africa's land is required to support the green hydrogen economy initiative. So for anyone who's afraid, like how much land are we going to start using in this? Is it going to impact agriculture, things like that? Very little land needs to be used to make this vision a reality. He also added that an additional 5.2 million hectares in the renewable energy development zones could be utilized for this purpose. So land that's already been dedicated for renewable energies. And basically, he ends off his speech saying that he looks up to you, the green hydrogen players, to take a lead in facilitating green hydrogen manufacturing capability in a manner that localizes the production of upstream and downstream value-added products. So it looks like government is driving to have the full hydrogen economy, from where we get the materials to building electrolyzers to transport to storage to export, everything within South Africa, and we can export around the globe, which I think is awesome. I think it's a good one. He said that he estimates that we can produce by 2050 between 6 and 13 million tons of green hydrogen derivatives per year. And that's in 2050. So yeah, really good. Nice to see that there's some policy behind it and there's some money behind it. You can see my two stories, story 1 and story 3, sort of tied together. And that's green hydrogen for you guys. I'm going to let you guys go with the obscure quote of the week. This one comes from Albert Hubbard. He says, "Do not take life too seriously. You'll never get out of it alive." I hope you guys have an awesome week. Thank you for staying all the way to the end of the podcast. If you guys want to reach out to us, you can contact us on highlevelpodcasts@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find us there. It's at High Level Podcasts, or you can look for myself, Jonathan Delport, or my business partner, Damon Hunselaar. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions, reach out to you, give you advice. You can tell us we're wrong. We can tell you you're wrong. We can have a fun exchange. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Enjoy your Heritage Day tomorrow, Tuesday, the 25th. Is that going to be the 25th? 24th is going to be Heritage Day. I hope you guys have an awesome time. Have a good braai and enjoy the week, and I will catch you in the next one.